Hi, and if you don't know me already, my name is Taryn and welcome to A British Audiophile. Now this is the last video that I'm going to post for this year, 2020. I'm going to take a break over the Christmas and holiday period and come back hopefully with a vengeance in the new year. So I thought this would be a good opportunity to reflect back on this year, look at some of the products that I reviewed, the good, the very good and the great, and pick out the one product that I felt was my standout product of the year. So just to be clear, this is the product that I've reviewed this year on this channel as opposed to products that have been launched in 2020. So I hope that's clear. Now before I get started, I just want to say a massive thank you to my 22,500 subscribers out there, those of you who regularly view my content and regularly contribute in the comments section, as well as those who do it on a more casual basis. I think we've built a bit of a community around this channel and hopefully a hi-fi support network that I'm immensely proud of, so thank you to all of you. I'm amazed that this channel has really grown the way it has. I regularly started producing content in January. There were a handful of sporadic videos last year, and in January I think I had a few hundred subscribers, and now it's at the point where it's taken seriously by manufacturers who are interested in reviews in the YouTube space. So again, massive thank you, that's down to you guys. And you've had to put up with quite a bit. The poor production values, I'm plagued with problems converting my 3.5mm output from my mic into USB to shoot this on my iPad, and to tell you the truth, video editing skills have never really been my strong suit. It's not something that I did before I started this channel. So I'm learning, it's improving, but you have had to put up with some pretty awful production values. I took inspiration from Steve Guttenberg and Sean from Zero Fidelity. They have excellent channels that are really focused on producing great content, and if they had the confidence to basically produce videos and not be too worried about high production values, I thought, well, maybe mine won't be a total embarrassment as well. So I'd really like to thank those guys for the inspiration that they've given me. Let's start with source components, or at least something related to source components first. Now, if you can hear gunfire in the background, it's not because the Brexit negotiations have broken down again. It's the joys of living in the English countryside. There's a shoot going on, so apologise if you can pick that up. I was sent the MCRU linear power supply that retails for £235 here in the UK. I plugged that into my Audiolab Ares Mini and I was quite taken aback by the improvement it gave. The clarity improved, the soundstage opened up, and micro details were just much more apparent. I already had the Hifi £49 low noise switch mode power supply in my system. I wasn't expecting that kind of improvement. In fact, it made more improvement to the sound than switching my Mojo for the Hugo DAC. But I couldn't give it a formal classification, and the reason was because of the connection involved. I could only test it with one product, and that was my streamer. I normally test with a minimum of 3 products before I give something a classification. So there just wasn't enough data points to give it a formal recommendation, and I can't really consider that as a product for the year. All I can say is that that product remains with me and still remains in my system. I reviewed the SMSL M300 Mark II DAC. Now that's a DAC that retails for £213 here in the UK, or at least it did the last time I checked on Amazon. That's a DAC that has a nice clean presentation and a very good feature set. It operates at a very competitive area of the market, and it lived up to expectations. It got a recommendation from this channel. Hyped up products rarely live up to the promise, but occasionally you do come across the odd little gem. And that was the case with the Denafrips Ares II that I reviewed, that retails here in the UK for £750. I was quite intrigued by the design as well. Being an R2R ladder DAC, I wanted to see what had been achieved with that type of technology. I was highly impressed. It sounded quite a bit better than my Cord Mojo that retails for £400. Now the Cord Mojo is designed for headphone use, and I still think it's one of the finest sounding DACs this side of £1,000. I've been banging the drum about Cord sticking the innards into a box with input switching, a remote control and proper RCA connections, and doing a desktop version. and selling it for £600–700. Well, you don't need to bother now, just buy the Denafrips Ares II. I think the Denafrips Ares II will give the Qutest a good run for its money. The Cord Qutest retails for £1,200, and I would love to have done an A/B comparison if I could have had both DACs here at the same time. Perhaps that's a follow-up video for the future. Denafrips Ares II I described as moving the needle in terms of what's achievable in affordable DACs, and I stand by that, and it would potentially be a Product of the Year award category winner. But there's another product that not only moves the needle, in my opinion, it takes that needle, shoves it up your derriere to make sure that you stand up and take notice as to how good it is, and I'll come to that later. Amplifiers. I decided to review a whole bunch of amplifiers around the £500 price point, and the reason was to test one of my own assumptions. What's that famous saying by Isaac Asimov? Assumptions are the window on your world. Every so often scrub them off, otherwise the light won't come in. What was the assumption or prejudice that I held? Well, it was this, that amplifiers around the £200–300 price point offered great value, which they do, and that in order to achieve great sonic performance, you needed to spend £1,000 plus on an amplifier. Was I historically impressed with amplifiers in between? Nah, not so much. Well, I'm glad I challenged that assumption, because it turned out there were a real couple of gems hidden in that market segment. I reviewed the Pro-Ject MaiA S2. Now that's a small Class D amplifier that retails for around £600 here in the UK. It's a nice clean sounding amplifier with a decent amount of refinement. The inbuilt DAC is good too, and I suspect, coming from Pro-Ject, that the phono stage is no slouch either, but it lacks power. Can't remember off the top of my head. I think it's something like 25 watts into 8 ohms, and there's limited current capability. It makes it only useful for desktop use or very small room applications, and that's the reason it got a recommended from this channel. The NAD C338, or NAD as a lot of people refer to it around the world, is another Class D amplifier that retails for circa £600. It's not the last word in sonic performance at its price point, but it's a fairly decent sounding amplifier with a decent inbuilt DAC, and it has Google Chromecast built in, which means that you can download a simple app on your phone or tablet and turn the amplifier into a streamer. It's an excellent feature to include, a one-box solution effectively, and that got a highly recommended from this channel. If you've only got circa £400 to spend, go out and get the Iota VX SA3. It's a very fine sounding amplifier for the money, even better sounding than the NAD, but the inbuilt DAC doesn't really do the amplifier justice. I should imagine it's a similar story with the phono stage. Nothing to complain about though at this price. That got a highly recommended from this channel. In my opinion, the real gem at this price point is the Audiolab 6000A. Now that also retails for around £600 here in the UK. It takes the sonic performance of the Iota VX SA3 and adds a degree of refinement, the kind of refinement that you normally associate with amplifiers at the price point above, circa £1,000. Okay, it doesn't have the grip, the authority and the control of those amplifiers, but it isn't £1,000 either. What it does have is a really good, fine sounding DAC inside, one that I personally wouldn't look to upgrade whilst I own this amplifier. It comfortably gets an outstanding from this channel, but it isn't my product of the year. A couple of months into starting this channel, Mads Buchardt reached out to me and offered me the S400s to review. Now I remember being quite surprised at the time. I only had a few hundred subscribers. I couldn't see what was in it for him. I think he just liked what I was doing with the channel and wanted to support me. So I was really appreciative that he sent me the S400s for review. And that's a fine sounding speaker at its price point. I think once you've converted it from euros, depending on the finish, it's around £1,600–1,700. Now it's not for everybody. It's a speaker that does some things remarkably well. It's a touch rolled off in the treble, and it's not the last word in resolution at its price point. But because of that passive radiator, it has a dynamics and a bass output that you'd normally associate with a compact floor stander. And also it has an excellent off-axis performance. It loads the room very evenly with sound, and it's very unfussy when it comes to positioning. If I was reviewing it today, now that I've got the classifications with the 3 tiers, recommended, highly recommended and outstanding, because of those virtues, it would get a highly recommended from this channel. So that got me thinking, what else can I review at around 2K that I can compare to the Buchardt S400s and my Pro-Ject Response 1 SC's? Current version of that also retails for around 2K. I reached out to ATC and asked to review their SCM 19s. Now that speaker didn't disappoint. That's where I think you really get into the ribs of the ATC sound, and it has a transparency and neutrality that even my Pro-Jects couldn't match. It's the finest sounding speaker I have yet reviewed on this channel. The only reason it didn't get an outstanding was that it's quite demanding of amplification. I think you're going to need to spend at least 2K, probably a bit more than that, to get the best out of those speakers. And because it's a sealed box, it has limited bass output. So I think, again, people are going to have to spend quite a bit on a subwoofer to extend the response, and that's fast enough to keep up with it. Like ATC, PMC is another brand that has a fine heritage in the pro audio world, supplying some of the finest studios in the world. I was interested in that brand and reviewing their speakers primarily because of the transmission line design. Now, whenever I've heard transmission line designs in the past and they're done right, there's something special about the way they deliver bass that other designs can't seem to match. And the 25/21i's that I reviewed were no disappointment in this regard. The bass was tight, it was fast, and it was surprisingly well extended for a compact speaker. The overall presentation was very clean and very refined. Okay, they're a touch on the cool side, a little bit on the forward side, may not suit everybody. That's why they got a highly recommended from this channel. I wanted to review a horn-loaded speaker, or at least a speaker with a horn-loaded tweeter. I was fortunate enough to come across the Triangle Genese Trios. Now that's a speaker, when Triangle eventually sought out a UK distributor here in the UK, it'll retail for around £1,750. So the Buchardt S400s, the current version of my Pro-Ject Response 1 SC's, the ATC SCM 19s, the PMC 25/21i's, and the Triangle Genese Trios are all speakers that I reviewed on this channel this year in and around the 2K price point. The Triangle does things differently. It does a bunch of things well and a couple of things not so well. It's not linear in its response. That's not what Triangle are going for with this speaker, and it's not the last word in stereo imaging. But boy, does music come to life when you listen to this speaker. There's an engagement and a vitality to the sound that none of the other speakers could match, and that's why it got a highly recommended from this channel. At a lower price point, a much lower price point, I reviewed the Acoustic Energy AE1s. Now that's an active speaker that retails here in the UK for £1,000. Now in a regular speaker, a passive speaker, you have a crossover that's made out of resistors, capacitors and inductors, and they can be problematic. In an active speaker, you have an electronic crossover. The other thing that you have in active speakers, in this particular case the active speakers have the amplifiers built in, is a separate amplifier for each driver. An amplifier for each tweeter and an amplifier for each woofer. Now when I first hooked up these speakers, I just finished listening to the ATC SCM 19s. I'd boxed those up, put these on the stands, and I was quite stunned by the performance that they offered. In fact, I had to go and get my wife from another room and said, come and have a listen to these. Now she's got quite a good ear, being passionate about music all her life. She's not an audiophile, and she thought they were impressive too. Okay, they're not the same level of performance as the ATC SCM 19s coupled with my exposure amplifiers, but my exposure amps today would be probably best part of 5K. The ATC's 2K connected to a rail that's £1,000. It's a £6,000 system compared to a £1,000 system. The Acoustic Energy AE1s have a level of performance that I just don't associate with this price point, £1,000. If you think you can get a £500 pair of speakers and a £500 amplifier and get this level of performance, forget about it. You can't. It's only when you're going to spend £1,000 on amplifiers and a similar amount on speakers that you're going to get to this level of performance, in my opinion. And I'm not someone who raves about products unnecessarily, but I'm highly impressed with what's on offer here. It's across the board. The bass is tight and it's fast. There's a decent amount of extension for a small bookshelf speaker. Okay, there's 50 watts on tap for the woofer, so it's not the most dynamic. There are bigger sounding systems and bigger sounding speakers out there. The mid-range has excellent neutrality. It starts and stops on a dime. Leading edges are clear, decays are nicely present, the background is black enough to allow micro details to shine through. It's a touch rolled off at the top, but nothing to complain about. The overall performance is stunning, and that's why it gets my product of the year. Well deserved. Excellent, well done Acoustic Energy. When I reviewed the Acoustic Energy AE1s 3 months ago, Bob had only arrived the day before. He was a couple of months old. He's 5 months old now, so I thought I'd finish this video with a little bit of an update and show him off. He's settled in amazingly well and he's a wonderful addition to the family. So that's it for me today. All that remains for me to say is Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. I'll see you in the new year. If you like this video, please hit that like button, please share it, and if you like what I do with this channel, please think about subscribing. But for today, for now, A British Audiophile, signing off. Say bye, Bob.